Welcome to episode 78 of the XRM Toolcast. In this episode, Scott and I share horror stories. Stories of things that maybe hadn't gone quite as planned. Stories of things that went definitely not quite as planned. And we also share some funny pranks that maybe one of us pulled, or both of us pulled, who knows, fun pranks that we pulled. And we also are maybe looking for some future pranks as well. So if you can share those with us, we'd appreciate it. But besides that, sit back, relax, and go ahead and get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of the XRM Toolcast. With me, your host, Daryl, always raising the bar, and Scott, Chainsaw Massacre DeRoe. Scott, how's it going?
Very good, Daryl. Chainsaw Massacre. Really, I never saw that coming.
Have you seen that movie, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, horror flicks? No?
Yeah, yes, right. You're going with the horror thing.
Horror, yes, horror.
Yes, right. I didn't get the reference. I didn't get it. I just thought you were just finding me scary. I mean, or slightly...
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to figure out if this is going to be a horrific episode or a horrible episode. We'll have to see which way it is.
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. We were just discussing the horror that comes with doing something wrong on your project. Yes. You know, and that feeling that you get, the fight or flight feeling, where you're not really sure whether or not you should hide, run, or run away and never come back again. Yes,
those are all wonderful stories. That I've made a few in my career, and I've witnessed others make theirs in their career. And we had some listeners that shared some of theirs with us. So we got a whole gamut of things to talk about.
I think it's certainly the thing that unites us, right? Yeah, I think we've all done something that
except for the brand newbies. The brand newbies haven't done anything yet, so they haven't had a chance to do anything wrong yet, you know? But they're right around the corner from experiencing that.
Yeah, I suppose, you know, if you ask someone in an interview, you know, give us an example of where you've done something wrong. I mean, what would you say? I mean, would you say, of course, I've never done anything wrong. That's why you need to hire me.
That won't go over very well, will it? No. No.
I'd be like, I definitely don't need to hire you if you're saying that you've never done something wrong.
I wonder if the safest answer would be to give something that's totally not related to your career. Like I was an American football official in high school, and there was a player, a guy fair caught a punt, and if he catches it, it's good, but if he doesn't, he drops it, it's a live ball, and people can grab the ball. Well, I blew the whistle dead right when he touched it, and quarter second later it fell out of his hands, and the ball should have gone to the other team, and I had to live with standing next to the coach that just lost the ball because of the call that I made.
Yes.
I learned never to blow my whistle that fast again. I learned. That's the key.
It's an important.
That's the key is to learn. That's what I say to my kids when they make a mistake. Did you learn anything?
Well, but I think they're transferable, right? So even though that's to do with blowing whistles in football, I think, that every mistake that we make, like you say, you learn something from it and you move forwards. And I think that's an important part of life, making mistakes and being able to, I think that actually I probably learn better the hard way. My father always used to say to me, he said, son, you can either do this the hard way or you can do this the easy way. And of course, the easy way was sitting down and listening to some kind of lecture that he was going to give me that would last about an hour and a half. And so inevitably I'd choose the hard way because it didn't involve the hour and a half lecture. But I think actually making the mistake and then learning from that means that it kind of becomes part of you a lot more than just the lecture does.
Oh, yeah. It's by far a more efficient and effective teacher. Just sometimes you get scars from it that you don't necessarily want to have, right?
Like we start comparing our scars, right? It's like, for those of you not watching on YouTube, I'm just showing my nasty scar on my arm where I fell off a bridge. You've got the same one, haven't you? Yeah. There we go.
Well, I gotta see here. Yeah. So well, mine's I got two. I got one right there, and then one on this side too. Yeah. So I got two.
Yeah. So they're kind of similar kind of. Yeah, this is the episode where Scott and Daryl compare their scars. Oh, and I've got one on my side.
Yeah.
Oh, my eyes. Don't show me that.
Scars can be life-saving too. My dad had he actually ruptured, his intestines actually ruptured before I was born. And so he had he had to have like 4 feet worth of his large intestine or small intestines removed or something crazy like that. And so he's got some very interesting looking scars from that surgery back in the day. So,
Wow.
Yeah, lucky to survive that when he was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
Yep. On that lovely note.
So did you get anybody replying to your tweet then?
Yes. So we tweeted out. We have we got a couple of people that we replied. At least one person chose to remain anonymous. And in the idea of me not making another mistake, which I could very easily make, I'm just not going to mention anybody's name where they came from. So, but some of these are more general and some of them are very specific. So, and then we'll probably share a few of our own stories. I figured, at least I know I've got at least one or two I could share from. I think I've shared already on this episode on the podcast once or twice, but who knows? We've had a lot of new listeners to the podcast as far as people joining us, at least on LinkedIn. I went through and tried to reach out to every single person, and I think we had 40 or 80 people last month that started following us on LinkedIn. So that was a long list of people to reach out to, but I got it, every single person. So from that last month. So if you were in between that month and January, I may have missed you. So reach out to me if you want. But so anyway, so let's get started here. So this is some of these are lessons learned rather than horror stories. Other ones are more of wow, I can't believe that just happened. So the first one is just to get started here was apparently in the early days of CRM Online 2013, if 2 people pressed publish all at the same time, the instance would hang and you'd have to wait for someone to call in and actually get it fixed. And that was a story of that repeated over and over again for, I think, this individual having to deal with that. Is that something you ever had to deal with?
So 2 people just publishing a normal solution or the same solution? I
think the publish all button.
Publish all, right? Okay.
Publish all, and if 2 people did it at the same time, there was some sort of threading issue, and it would hose the system for a while.
I mean, that's really forgivable, I think. Because, how would you know that someone else is going to press that same button?
Well, I think it's more of Microsoft's issue here. Hey, how could you push something out here where we hose us just by using your system? So
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's still to a certain degree today, right? If you press the publish all, there is going to be an interruption to people's operations. I mean, it's certainly not as bad as it used to be. There's less stuff that stops, but things do still stop whilst you publish customization.
Well, I think this is on-prem, and I think it caused it to get a thread lock sort of issue. I think is what he's saying here, not just it's publishing for that. So, yeah, that's interesting. I had something very similar happen. First time working on CRM, working on-prem, and trying to debug things, I went ahead and attached the debugger to the server because I don't have my own local CRM, right? And everyone started complaining that dev wasn't working. Why is dev not working? And then I was like, oh, because I have a breakpoint pause in my plugin. Sorry, guys.
That one's classic. Yes. Yeah, I've done the same thing. I may have once or twice. Yeah, got distracted, gone for lunch with a breakpoint. It's still on there. It's yeah. Oh, but those are the days when you could just attach to the process on the server.
Yeah. I don't think those were the days. No, those weren't the days at all.
But it's funny because those were the times when that was really before I think unit testing was held up so much as in high esteem in software development. It was okay, well, testing is important and everything, but certainly from plugin perspective, plugin development, there were so many variables, so many different things that you really didn't know the interactions were going to happen. You didn't really know that the details of the pipeline and all of the various different parent and child things that are going on there, and over time we sort of tamed the beast of the of the plugin pipeline and all of these ways of creating these tests that allow us to replicate what's going on. And then, of course, you know, the plugin, a plugin tester as well, and you know, your projects as well. So yeah, things are in a much more healthy state these days, I think, than where we were. So you're right. Yeah, they were not the days. They were not the good old days where
They're not the good old days where you had control of everything, and therefore if you messed something up, you had no one to turn to except yourself. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, you do hear of you know, back in those on-prem days, and I guess people are still doing it, but I mean, there's a number of projects I've been on where it's moving to online, and you crack open the on-prem SQL database and you're like, wait, what's all this? What are all these stored procedures? Those definitely are not platform.
What are all these triggers that are people are?
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
Yes. Yeah, we had someone that was brand new to CRM development, and he just like went in and like started writing all these SQL scripts to create data. I was like, "What are you doing? Like, that's not going to work at all." No, and he completely hosed the system. He just
the thing is that it did kind of work. But if people broadly knew what they were doing and were careful, people could actually create triggers and, you know, and call store procedures that would make changes directly to the database. As long as they were wary of all the implications of that, it did actually work. And so it was a hard conversation to have. So I think these days where the move to online is much more of a big deal, is great because it creates much more of a separation of components. You know, the components are much clearly defined. So it's like, well, that's Dataverse, and Dataverse is a component, and you can't just go in and fiddle around with the innards. Yeah, exactly.
No matter how much you want to. Here's another one that I guess I wasn't aware of this, but I didn't think about this. But using the same service principal or user across different environments, and then doing a major import in one environment that consumes all the API limits and affects the other environments. So if you did something in dev or test, and it would bring down prod because you've maxed out your API limits for that account.
Oh, wow.
I didn't realize that was something that was apparently across organizations, across environments, tied to the actual API itself, the user itself. So
yeah, no, that's a good one. That's a good one to be aware of. Yeah, I think it's those rate limits are probably what they're going to be hit against the different servers that you're hitting as well. So yeah, I think probably the best practice there is to have separate service principals for each environment. Anyway, so you don't accidentally, because that's, you know, you've all seen that meme, you know, like wrong database selected, 1 million records
deleted. I about did that this week, actually. I was so luckily there was an error in the SQL script and it saved me. But yeah, that current project, like it truncated one of the tables that we had in our UAT environment, and luckily it was one that we weren't using, and so I just quietly recreated it, and like, there's nothing to see here. I didn't accidentally almost lose a week and a half worth of work from one of our developers to try to get this to all these millions of records to get ported over and stuff. So yeah, that was that was pretty very bad, very close to being a very, very bad situation. So
a near miss. That's definitely a near miss.
Near miss. I ducked and it just barely missed. So yes.
And it's that feeling you get when you realize that something could have just gone wrong. I get like a cold sweat. You know what I mean? It's like a kind of an adrenaline rush, and you kind of feel, you know, it's a sort of an awful feeling, but then, you know, you have to go for a run or something to get rid of all of that adrenaline from your system.
Yeah. 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 I tend to scream like a girl in those situations. I found I was doing a home renovation project, and I was using a Sawzall to cut out a full shower, bath shower unit, and I cut through the water pipe in my wall. And so I had water spraying out of my wall at me in my bathroom.
That's classic.
And
I
started like screaming pretty much like that. And as I was trying to leave the bathroom, I had taken the door off the hinge because we were replacing it we were putting a barn door on. And when I went to go pull it, I had put it back in there so the drywall wouldn't get to my bedroom. When I went and pulled it, it wasn't on the hinge. So it just kind of like stayed there, and I ran smack dab into the small, the skinny end of the door. Poof, and for a second there, I thought, am I going to pass out? No, I'm not. Okay, all right, let me keep on running. And so I ran down and ended up turning the water to the house off. But I was screaming the whole time. So.
In my head, that's an advert that you just described, an advert for some kind of home renovation company or plumber company. It's like, is this you?
I'm sure this has been done before. Someone flushes the toilet and like water pours out of the ceiling above them or something. Like you see something like that happening.
Yeah. Goodness me. I bet plumbers have got some pretty horrendous horror stories to talk about.
I can imagine.
Yeah. Well, there was I think that sinking feeling is it's usually when something has happened and there's nothing you can do about it. It's like it's happened, and literally all you can do is just walk away, and and also when you don't know, there was a time, probably the worst sinking feeling that I had was when I was like doing software which was it wasn't actually Power Platform stuff. It was running software in big industrial machines. So, and I took a trip because I had to install a patch to a machine that was in a big factory that was running in a production line. So I had to take this trip to Japan. So from the UK to Japan, which is a long trip. This is back before the days of being able to, kind of remote in and stuff. But even then, even if you could have remoted in, it really isn't something you'd want to be able to do remotely, because it's all to do with the equipment as well as much as the software. And so it was like real time operating system and everything. And so I had this floppy disk, and and I had a list of, and I rehearsed this stuff loads and loads of times back in the factory in the UK. And so I was there with my briefcase, literally floppy in a briefcase. It's like Mission Impossible stuff. And I got there and I had to go through, this incredible journey of getting in taxis, because it wasn't like directly near Tokyo. It was out in the countryside. So this big factory. And so I was going into places where the people didn't really speak English that well, and had little cards with the names of places I needed to go. So I'd show those cards to people, and they go, "Oh, okay, right, you need to go that way." Anyway, I got there and I went into this factory, put the disc in, installed the patch, did the tests that I'd had on the list of things, and then left. Literally, it was because I was being ushered out of the building as soon as I'd done the stuff. I mean, I'm the kind of person that if I'd like to hang around and just check if things are working. So I'm the kind of person that if you do a production deployment, late at night, I like to hang around for like 3 or 4 hours afterwards, just to, monitor things, look at everything's running smoothly, like a nicely well-oiled machine. And
just in case you're not as smart as you look. Yeah.
But no, I was like, they were like, no, come on, out. We don't want you here anymore. You've done your thing. You move on. So I was like, okay. So anyway, I get in the taxi, reverse the journey all the way back, get to the airport, get on my plane. And it was literally as the plane was lifting off that the little bit of doubt entered into my brain. It was like, did I do that last step? Was that last step that I had on my well-rehearsed? And the thing is, if you have that little seed of doubt, it just grows and grows and grows. So this whole flight back, I don't know what it was, 12 hours or something. I was literally just stewing in my own.
Oh, man. What a horrible flight.
Nothing I could do about it. And I got back, and there was no email back in there on your smartphone and stuff. So I had to land and go and call my boss and say, have you heard anything? But it was all right, actually, in the end.
All right. So you remembered.
Yeah, I did do it, but it was just, thinking back. And if there is one thing that I think I can kind of hold responsible for that feeling of wanting to double, triple check, I can trace it back to that flight,
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's just...
I'm just sweating thinking about it now, actually.
Oh, it reminds me of I bought a car from somebody on Craigslist, and my previous car had been totaled when I bought it, and we got it fixed up, and it was a great deal. It was a Grand Am. Bought it in the year it was the model year, same year as the model year. There we go. And it had been in a wreck, and we were able to fix it all up, and it served me great for 10 years. Perfectly ran. Everything was great deal. So I was going to do the same thing with this other car, and it was not the same car. It was not the same fix-it place, and it was not good at all. And I ended up, there was a sinking feeling really got in when I realized that the odometer didn't work after owning it for 5 or 6 days. I realized I have no idea how many miles are on this car. And my wife's like, when I bought the car, I was like, I trust you to make the right decision. And yeah, so I actually had to, when I realized that was the case, I ended up trying to sleep that night. I couldn't sleep at all. And finally the next day, I told her the next day. I just had to get off my chest. I couldn't.
Very brave.
It was like, oh, okay, all right, we got to do this now. But I had to wait for a better time than that night. The night wasn't a good time to tell her. So I was just smart enough to do that. But yeah. Yes, I will never buy another vehicle without first checking the odometer works.
No, that's a classic. Yeah, so it's like Ferris Bueller running it in reverse.
Yes.
All
right. Let's get back to sort of technology stuff here. I guess I love these stories; they're great. But here's one that happens many a time, although it happens less and less now, and that's walking into a new project, an existing project. And realizing that none of the JavaScript has namespaces, and that they have lots of issues where they're stepping on each other and they don't even notice it. And so that was one person mentioned that, and I'm going to add to that, walking to a project where none of the extensions for the web resource files have any, and none of the web resource files have extensions. Yeah. So you download it out of the solution, and then there's no extension on it, and Visual Studio doesn't recognize it. VS Code doesn't recognize it because it doesn't know it's a TypeScript file or a CSS file or a JavaScript file or whatever, and so you've got to handle all that stuff. Hate that stuff. Yeah,
it's hard, isn't it, when you do inherit a project that doesn't do things the way that you would do them. And I think it's very tempting to just sort of be down on it and just say, oh, this doesn't do this, and especially when it. But then you have to bite your lip, and you have to say, well, okay, it's where we're starting from. And if it's working currently, you just have to look at it that way, rather than, because I know that I have written stuff, and
yes,
anybody could look at it and go, it's not very good. But, I could say, well, at the time there was this constraint, that constraint, or maybe I can't even make any excuses for it. Maybe it was just bad code in the first place. So it is hard. It is very hard when you look at something and you think, oh no, I wouldn't have done it like that. But then again,
I'm much more. I'm very forgiving when I walk in and I'm like, okay, this is someone that just is trying to copy paste from Stack Overflow. They've got 4 or 5 files. And okay, great. You got something patched together working. I see what you're trying to do. I can handle this much better, and I'll just take that. But then there's like one project I went on where I think they had like 50 files, and it was lots and lots of stuff. It was not somebody that was just trying to copy and paste. They were people that were just putting all the stuff out there, and I'm just like, this is sort of working, not all the time, and it was great. Yeah. Anyway, all right. No, I'm the one who gets cold chills about that.
The thing is, what do? Do you go and change it all? Because, there's one thing that, again, if you change something, there is always an implication. It's so tempting, right? Isn't it? You see something. I've been stung by this so many times. You see something in the code, be it your code or someone else's code, and you look at it and you think, yeah, well, that's wrong. I need to fix that. I'm going to make that edit. And then you check it in along with something else, so sort of surreptitiously, like under the radar, and then and then it's like, why is it all broken? And then you look at it and you go, oh, that's why it was like that. Because at the time you didn't understand there was some, nuance of the way that the software was working. And at the time you're in your naivety and in your
yeah.
I
did something very similar just today. I was trying to check in TypeScript if an array was length if it was 0, if it was empty, and instead of an equals or triple equals, I had a single equals, which apparently clears the array. I didn't even realize that you could clear the array that way. But then someone else made a change. Like, why'd you rip out my change? It was clearing the array, and I was like, what? And then finally, I was like, I have an equals. We're missing the. It was fun.
Yes.
Fun languages that aren't typed and don't catch all as many mistakes as I wish they would. So,
yeah. Well, if gut feel is actually something that's I've kind of come to trust over the years. If you kind of do something, you think, there's something that doesn't feel right about this, and whether or not it's the culmination of some experience that you've learned over the past, or if it just doesn't quite sit, go with your gut instinct.
Yep. Totally. Here's one. Let me see if this has happened to you. Have you ever been on a project where they either don't have any plugins, don't have any code for the plugins, or the code for the plugins does not match what the actual deployed code is for the plugins? Have you ran into either of those scenarios?
Yes. Yeah. Many times. Yep. That's a difficult one. Very difficult, because you're locked in, really. I mean, it's like, well, what do? Do you start the project again, or do you kind of use a decompile the stuff?
Try to decompile it and then match it up, and you're like,
and then work out. Of course, decompiling it never looks anything like the original code.
No, it doesn't. No,
loads of go-tos all over the place, and and so it's a hard one. I mean, my approach with that tends to be that you do it piecemeal. So you say, right, okay, well, we've got a new requirement in this particular area. So, okay, well, we're going to just take out that step of that plugin. Yep.
But even that, sometimes you have to almost, you may have to like do a little bit of decompile on, here's this one method. Okay, then now I need to do this, and
definitely
kind of make it shoehorn it in. But that's
No, it is a hard one. It is a hard one, and I think that it's a very easy one to get into. Unfortunately, especially where you've got lots of different people involved in a project and different places that source code can be placed, and putting source code in escrow, I think, is always a good thing for any engagement with any organization. Having some kind of third party storage of code, if there's some sort of IP, type. Conversations have to be had, so you can at least you've got it if there is some dispute in the future.
Okay, here's a question for you. Having no error is bad. If there's an issue, you don't have an error, you don't know what the error is, and having no error message is bad. But what's worse than having no error message? You have a guess what that might be?
What's worse than having no error message?
Yeah, do you have an error? If you have an error, and what's worse than having an error with no error message? If you have an error, given that you have an error, what's worse than having an error with no error message?
Unexpected error has occurred. I don't know. Contact your system administrator.
No, and that's kind of like an error with no error message, really, right? Like having an error message where it tells you the error that's not the actual error. That's the worst error.
Yes. The
you get that a lot with people that will. They'll try to log something on an error and get an error in the log, and then they'll throw the error. And so the error that you see is you have an error in the log, but it's actually not. That's not the error at all. There's another error that's truly the error causing all your problems. But that's an example of one that I've frequently ran into, where I get an error message and it's like, oh, great, and then I go and look at it like, this is not at all. But no, bad.
Are you a kind of add error information at every kind of level kind of person, or are you a let everything bubble up type person?
So if I think of plugin development, I very rarely, I don't ever catch an error. The only time that I ever catch an error is I'm doing something outside of CRM, and I want to, catch that error and then say, hey, this is, maybe log, this is what I requested and this is what the response was, and then throw the error. But then everything else, my plugin base class catches everything and logs everything at that level. So so that's more where I'm at. But yeah, I mean, it depends on where you're at, and if it makes sense that, hey, this is something really crazy, and I know I'll need this information when I debug, I better throw a custom error or throw something else. I mean, that was one thing that I had to learn how to figure out how to do back in the day was, you can't throw your own custom exceptions from your plugin.
Yeah.
And you can't depend on another library that you've shoehorned in via IL merge to throw an exception. Like, you've got to handle all those exceptions as well. So that was one of the first things I had to do with my plugin based class, was to go and look at the exception and go, oh, this is from the .NET framework, I'll let it go. Or this is from the XRM framework, I'll let it go. Oh, this is not from any of those things. I better capture the error. And you can't put it as an inner exception. That'll still fail because it's got to serialize. And so you've got to grab some of the bits out of it and create it as a standard exception. So that was some really ugly code to write back in the day.
And there's some magic exceptions as well in plugin pipelines as well.
Yeah.
Wait,
magic exceptions? How? What do you mean magic exceptions?
So SQL exceptions.
Okay. The dreaded.
There are certain SQL exceptions that if you throw them manually, then the platform will think that something's happening. I don't know if that's necessarily always that's the case now, but it certainly was the case.
I never thought of throwing a SQL exception before. That sounds like all sorts of fun things to be doing.
So yeah, I mean, if you for example, I mean, I've not tried it recently, but there was a time where you could throw a SQL exception and it would trigger a retry loop in the workflow.
Oh, I think I remember that now. I don't remember what it was. I think I remember that
because it was a lock. So it was basically saying SQL couldn't acquire a lock on a particular table. Right. So the whole process would then go into a retry async operations table, right? So we kind of go into pending and retry and all that kind of stuff. And so you have to, if you're communicating with another SQL library, then those kind of exceptions could then trigger unexpected behaviors. But yeah, I'm with you though, totally on the whole not adding information unless you've got anything significant context that you need to add. So you add it and then sort of throwing it again. Most of the time, you can add that to the trace, and then it gives you all the information you need.
Yep. Okay, let's see here. What's the next one here? Code compiled in debug mode. Okay, this is one I didn't know if I understood. They said code compiled in debug mode deployed to production for both PCFs and assemblies. I've never ran into and I don't do a lot of PCF stuff, but I've never ran into an instance where, we have a problem in production and it's because they compiled in debug mode rather than release mode. Have you ran it? Have you ran any issue with that?
No, I don't think any issue.
Okay.
It's going to be a little bit slower, I think.
Potentially, you could be a little bit less performant, but
I don't think it's ever going to be the bottleneck. I think the bottleneck's always going to be the other stuff that's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the size, I suppose, your size of your assembly would go down if you deployed it in
release mode.
If you're in release, you'll have to be a smaller assembly. Not massively, I think, but with PCF though, different matter altogether.
Okay, so what's the PCF? Yeah. How's that different?
Because that's TypeScript, and if you deploy in release mode, it's minified. It's got production Webpack configuration. Whereas if you deploy it in development mode, it's got all the source maps in line. It's not minified. It's using eval to execute code rather than just the inline code. So it's both performance wise and also size wise,
which is performance again.
Yeah, exactly. And not only performance but also like the size that it's going to be stored in your Dataverse table. So it might time out when you may even, if you've got a really complicated PCF, you may even get to the maximum size there's that setting, it's still an email attachment, maximum email attachment size.
No, I haven't dealt with this.
But there's like web resources. Okay, yeah, the maximum size of a web resource is dictated by that setting that says email attachment.
Email size.
Yeah, because it's like it's annotation size or something. I haven't seen it actually in the updated admin center, but I think it's the same thing. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it is. But yeah, so if you applied it in development mode, you could reach that maximum size, and it will stop you from deploying it. Okay. So yeah, it's quite a big deal in PCF.
Here's another one that I've got a personal story with this one, but testing as system admin and thinking about security issues, not thinking about security issues ever. Like my very first project with CRM, we were getting everything working, and we were under the gun and everything, and then we deploy everything to like a test environment, and nothing works. And what's going on? And finally realizing, we we didn't once think about security roles and rights and privileges and access and all this other kind of fun stuff. And yeah, that was really painful lesson to go. Oh yeah, just because it works for me doesn't mean it's going to work for anybody else that's not a system admin. So
that's so true. Totally. Yeah, and it's so easy to not do as well because it's so time consuming, trying to set up all the different users and especially if you're doing sort of handovers with business process flows with approvals, you've got different users with different roles, and you've got to log in on different browser sessions, and it's very time consuming to set that stuff up. Not least if you're going to automate it. If you're going to do some automated tests, then you've got to scaffold all of the security roles as well. So, and then cross business unit stuff as well. Then, because I think that's the problem, isn't it, with these things? There's so many permutations and combinations of the configurations that you can get into.
Yes. Oh, just think of how frustrated the person that we were working with on that. It's like, you guys did a test in the different role. Oh, I'm sorry. And yeah. So,
I'm sure they forgave you eventually.
They did eventually.
There was a project I was working on, and it was definitely a horror pit of your stomach kind of scenario when the root business unit was reparented. And there was thousands of users under all the different child business units. But of course, if you reparent that parent business unit,
everything has to update underneath it.
Removes all the roles of all of the users.
Ooh, okay.
Because it cascades down, right? Because every role. Yeah, so I mean, with the new cross business unit role assignment, that wouldn't obviously necessarily be affected. But for where you've got a user being assigned with a role that's linked to their business unit, yeah, that was a horrible situation. So it was like trying to reverse and trying to find specs from backups to say, okay, well, this is what it was 3 days ago when the last backup we can restore, and then trying to restore. And in the meantime, trying to fend off calls from people saying, why can't I log into CRM?
This is actually a really good one that we had another option we had here. So this person was debugging an auto numbering solution, which is extremely difficult to create in CRM correctly. It was debugging an auto numbering solution back in 2011, and the users were complaining about slow performance. He looked at it. Turned out the plugin retrieved every record in the table ordered by the auto number and simply added one to set the auto number.
Oh dear! Wow, I tell you what, that is like 10 out of 10 for optimism on that one. Yeah, this will work. Can't see any problems with that.
I mean, and I guess it had to have. I mean, it would break at 5,000 once it got over 5,000 users, right? Assuming that haven't ordered some. Like, yeah, I mean, there's so many ways for that to go wrong. It's amazing that it even worked at all, right?
I know. Yeah. In order for it to work, they'd have to really think about it. I think that's the funny thing about that. It's like you'd really have to think about a lot of scenarios in order for that to actually do its the right kind of query. Brilliant. Yeah, and those are the worst ones where gradually the system's starting to get slower and slower, and everyone's like, "Why is this happening?"
And finally, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Or the other fun type is if you have a plugin on like and a system user retrieve, and you have an exception that you aren't thinking about, and then no one can log into the system because every time it goes to retrieve the user, it fails because of your plugin.
Oh yeah,
so,
yeah.
That's a fun one to do.
Is there a way out? I mean, how did you get out of that then?
So, I was able to unregister the plugin or a plugin step or something, but it couldn't clear itself, and it took a whole hour for the plugin to cache to expire, and then for it to refresh, for it to actually start working again. But otherwise, I think you probably would have to submit a Microsoft ticket if you really if you didn't have that connection created to authenticate you already. Yeah, I think that would probably cause that to happen. But yeah, I did it for a hackathon. I was at a hackathon at a table with people. I'm like, all right, I'm the developer. Let's go. I can do that in a plugin. And I had some error, and I brought down our whole little system for like a whole hour trying to get it to work.
Was your hackathon trying to create a virus that would infect a platform and disable it?
That's what my create a plugin in an hour approach is, right? Trying to create. I like doing April Fool's stuff for that, like the making it look like everybody's name is Daffy Duck or something, for a particular user. Those are kind of fun things I think of doing, playing a prank on somebody, that kind of stuff. So
yeah,
be cool. So another issue. This is I've gone through all of our user stories, and I have one that I actually submitted to the Daily WTF.
Oh yeah.
And if you knew it all from me, my Twitter stuff, sometimes I would have like the Daily WTH to be more politically savvy or correct or whatever. But yeah, so that website, I submitted one where I was working on a project where we brought in this contractor that finally got fired when he swore out his boss at the company, or his client. Yeah, so finally that was the thing that actually broke the straw that broke the camel's back. But everything he did was in XML, and everything's XSLT based. So anytime you had a message, it was in XML, and then you had to apply an XSLT on top of it to translate it into other XML. And everything was that way. Databases, query, everything was done through XSLT. And it got to the point where he was writing a programming language within the XSLT to be able to do stuff. And we needed to do something simple like go through and figure out what was it? It was all the prices of all the products at a particular store or something, or maybe it was online for all the inventory at all the store. We had to upload that to the web database to be able for it to query, for it to show people, hey, this is all our products that we have current on hand inventory, and they needed it every 10 minutes. And I killed the process. The process died after about, I think, 5 hours or 6 hours, because it finally had a Stack Overflow from like all these XSLT translations that it was doing through the Stack. It was the longest exception I'd ever seen in my life. Yeah, that was pretty crazy. I replaced all that with a couple C# dictionaries, and look at that. I got it working pretty much right away. So it was kind of funny.
Yeah, XSLT was it's kind of good for what it's good at. But if you kind of use it as a just a hammer for everything.
My problem is that no one knows XSLT though. It's like, hey, let's go get an XSLT developer, and we'd like, So
it was quite big in integration, sort of, especially back in the kind of e-commerce days. Yep. Nice. Definitely.
It was a crazy project.
So I'm more interested in why he swore at his boss, actually.
I don't remember. He also yelled at me. I think he swore at me too, saying my code was that kind of code is crap code or something. And I yelled back, well, you have to fire me before I stop coding that way or something. I don't do that. Like, that's not me. I don't stand up and yell in the middle of the office. And, yeah.
You'd have to be really confident in your own abilities to be able to do that. I think.
Yes. Now, but we did kind of get him back a little bit. We created a program that we were able to remotely install on his machine because he was attached to the domain that randomly minimized all of his windows every 2 to 6 hours. That's all it did. So he'd be working around, boom, everything just minimized. What just happened? And then you get it all set, and then maybe that day or maybe another time, maybe the next day, everything just minimized. What? We asked the guy sitting next to me. I do that
by accidentally using some gesture that I don't exactly know.
Oh, the window shake is the one that's really annoying. I always take that one off. Like if you grab the window and you like move it back and forth, apparently that means I want to see this and nothing else. And to me, that just screams Microsoft Bob sort of idea of I want what I would do in a real world where kind of shaking this to get attention. I want that to be a way the computer interacts with me. Like, no, you don't. So that's like the first thing I always turn off in a new install is the Windows shake thing. I don't know.
We should have like a shaking a stick at it kind of gesture.
Yeah.
If something's gone wrong, you can shake your stick at it and it closes everything down or something. Like, get off my lawn.
Yes. Yeah, those are that was what we did. He never found out about it. We uninstalled it after like a couple of weeks. We asked the guy next to him if he ever mentioned anything. He's like, no, but he started swearing that his mouse wasn't working. It's like, stupid mouse. It's a funny thing. So
you were about 12 at the time then.
No, I was old enough to probably know better, but man, we had a whole lot of fun working there. That's the place I had the most fun working because we did silly things. One of the guys, he left his spaghetti in the boss's mini fridge for a month, maybe a little bit more, and forgot about it. And I finally asked the boss, I was like, so whose spaghetti is in this? And how long has it been here? He's like, oh yeah, that's Tyler's. I don't know. It's been there forever. He's probably forgotten about it. It's like, can I grab it? He's like, yes. And so I grabbed the UPS envelope, the plastic bubble envelope. I just dumped it in there, sealed it, addressed it to him, and set it on his desk that night. So in the morning, he walks in. He's like, oh, I got a package. And I'm like, we never get packages. When's the last time you got a package at your work? Like, you never get packages. And it's like, it's squishy. What is it, like a sweatshirt? And he opened it up. He's like, oh! Said it smelled absolutely horrible. I just emptied the spaghetti directly into the package.
Awful. I feel sorry for the guy now. I really do. Come on. Everyone was just looking, waiting for him to open it.
He would put tape over my mouse, the laser beam on the mouse.
This sounds like you were working at the office.
Basically that was it. I actually did one of the exact tricks from the office. I took the guy's phone and I hit it up in the ceiling tile above his desk.
You didn't put his stapler in Jello as well, did you?
No, I should have. I didn't. I don't think I thought. Yeah, that was coming. And then he also I'd have lotion on my desk and he'd put some tape on the lotion. So when you squeeze on it, it would shoot out the side because there's just a little tiny bit going. So it would shoot at this horrible angle and get lotion all over your desk if you weren't paying attention. But luckily I happened to have my hand on that side of it when I squeezed down. So I caught that one. But yeah, we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, you can have a whole episode of all the pranks that you've done over here.
I think that's about it. I don't know, but yeah, it was a good time. Good time. Well, do we have any other horror stories that you wanted to mention, or anything else that we can bring up?
I've got lots of horror stories. But I'm not going to bore people with them. But yeah. They all involve me making stupid mistakes and just feeling just like I need to throw up and then hopefully learning from them over time. But honestly, I do think that every time I go through and do something now, I'll run through all of those times and relive them I feel that there's like a kind of
that's a big burden you have there, Scott. Oh no!
I know.
Once upon a time, I clicked this button I shouldn't have. Oh no!
I need to sort of I hope that it makes me a better engineer, but yeah. I mean, there was numerous times when I published new versions of the Ribbon Workbench, and basically my email just blew up with people going, "Doesn't work, fix it."
Have you brought down the XRM toolbox at all? I think I did that once. I forget what I did, but I brought down the XRM toolbox.
Oh, Jonas Jonas has done that a couple of times. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think he's done it too.
It's definitely a badge. There should be some kind of badge that you get, I reckon. A community badge. I took down the XRM. I've taken down worldwide. Took down the XRM toolbox. Oh, maybe we don't want to encourage that behavior.
No, we probably don't want to encourage that. That was. What was that? I had some XRM or some Stack Overflow like suggestion I gave for like a badge. I think it was like smarter than John Skeet or something, where he answered a question and you got more points in your question or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So, like if you can do that, if your answer gets more votes than John Skeet, that's pretty impressive, So that was
yeah. But that you have to be very careful when you give badges to people. Like, remember the whole gamification thing, right? Gamification sort of was a bit of a flash in the pan. Remember there was the add-on for CRM.
For Microsoft? For CRM, yeah.
And then, there were other solutions around there. But the fundamental problem is if you have to be very careful what you encourage in terms of the behavior. Because if you give someone a badge to add contacts, well, they're not going to care if those are duplicate contacts or not. They're just going to add loads of contacts. And go like, well, I've got a whole wallet of business cards. I'm just going to go and put in there. I'm not going to search for them. And so, you have to be very careful what you wish for in terms of, the metrics that you're measuring.
It's the same thing with paying people for lines of code, right?
Yeah.
Or bug fixes. I'll create my own bugs and I'll fix them and they'll be great.
The first job I had was Fortran, programming with Fortran, and there was a guy at the end of the office, and he was like, no one said anything to him that might upset. No one would do anything like put spaghetti in a UPS
an envelope and give it to me.
Let alone swear at him. I mean, literally, everyone lived day to day scared that he would leave or retire or I don't know, die or something. But he had these huge piles of, remember the double line spacing printer paper, dot matrix paper on his desk. Mm-hmm. And it was like a sort of a cave of all of this paper around him, and it's just lines and reams of code. And I'm not sure if it was really to do with the fact that Fortran required that much code, or if it was the fact that he was paid in. I suspect the latter. He was paid in the number of lines of code he wrote.
Wow,
it was definitely from that era.
Wow. Oh, that's crazy. That is crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Now it should be. It's quite the opposite, isn't it? Trying to, especially with
we pay people not to code.
Low code. That's what we're doing. It really a solution. It should be on the merits of the least amount of code. That less code, more power. That's the motto.
Yep. It is. It is. So,
it's funny how people, some people might think that is contrary to the kind of stuff, the conversations we've been having about making pro code stuff, but it's definitely part of the equation. We want to be making less code so that we can maintain it, and so we don't have less mistakes that we can make. And less horror stories that we have to live through.
Yes, all those fun things. Well, Scott, we are approaching the end of our time limit here. We've shared quite a few stories here, and some personal stories, and some funny moments as well. Anything else you think we need to cover before we say adieu?
No, I really enjoyed it. It's been quite nice to just
sit and
talk
chat.
Talk about old times and talk about how goofy you were in your office. I definitely need to up my prank game.
Oh yeah, you need to do that. And I'm still And if anyone listening to this comes up with an idea of a good prank plugin for CRM, let me know. I always had to think of something to do for for like an April Fool's prank or something I could do for a demo and for a presentation. So yeah, always doing that. So all right, well, Scott, we don't have any guests today. It's just you and I. If our listeners want to comment us and say, hey, I hated this episode, or hey, I love this episode, how can they get a hold of us, Scott?
Well, you can email us at cast@xrmtoolbox.com or get a hold of us on Twitter and social media at xrmtoolcast. And yeah, definitely let us know more of or less of this kind of drivel.
Dribble. Wow, we really set the bar higher, don't we? Yes. So if it's just you and I, it's just dribble. If it's not, then
just dribble,
just us.
Yeah, and any suggestions for other guests that you'd like to see on that would be great as well.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it was great chatting to you, Daryl. Very enjoyable.
Yep. Good talking to you too. Have a good one, Scott.
Take care.
Bye. This has been the XRM Toolcast with Daryl Labar and Scott Durrell. Produced by Lynn Zawin. If you have any questions or suggestions, please send them to cast@xrmtoolbox.com, tweet @xrmtoolcast, or hit us up on our LinkedIn XRM Toolcast page.